The sky was a muted grey, the kind that blankets the world in a quiet stillness, and the cemetery was bathed in soft morning light as Daniel stepped carefully across the dew-soaked grass, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the earth with each step. He wore a deep blue suit, immaculately pressed, with a white shirt beneath, his late wife's favourite look on him, though it had been years since she'd last smiled at him in it. His heart pounded with the dull ache of memory as he approached the grave, the place he visited every year on this day, the anniversary of her passing. The headstone stood solemnly beneath an old oak tree, weathered slightly from the seasons, but still carrying her name with painful clarity. He paused before it, taking in the carved words as if seeing them for the first time, feeling the familiar lump rise in his throat. She had been everything to him, kind, brilliant, warm, and her absence was a shadow that stretched across every corner of his life. He crouched, laid a single white rose at the base of the grave, and let his fingers trail across the cold stone. "I miss you," he whispered, not expecting an answer, but saying the words anyway. The silence around him was absolute, save for the occasional chirp of a distant bird or the whisper of wind through the trees. And then, just as he was about to stand again, a soft voice broke the stillness. "What are you doing here?" Startled, Daniel turned to see a little girl standing just a few feet away, her head tilted slightly, her eyes wide with curiosity. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, with long golden blonde hair cascading in soft waves over her shoulders, and a pink dress topped with blue denim overalls that looked as if they had been chosen with care. A delicate flower headband crowned her head, and she looked completely out of place in such a somber setting, like a spring bloom in the dead of winter. For a moment, Daniel simply stared at her, unsure of what to say, unsure even of how she'd gotten here alone. "I'm visiting someone?" he finally said, trying to keep his voice gentle. The girl nodded, not seeming frightened or shy. "I come here sometimes too," she said. "It's quiet here. I like the quiet." Daniel felt a strange sense of familiarity as he looked at her. Something in her eyes, or maybe the calm way she spoke, reminded him of someone. He couldn't place it, but it sent a strange shiver down his spine. "Do your parents know you're here?" he asked softly. She shrugged, still gazing at the headstone. "My mommy used to come here a lot," she said. "She said this was a place full of stories." Daniel blinked, feeling something stir deep in his chest. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she replied with a small smile. "What's yours?" "Daniel," he said, trying to return her smile, though his heart felt tight. "It's nice to meet you, Lila." She stepped a little closer, her gaze now on the rose he had placed on the grave. "Was she your mommy?" she asked. "No," Daniel said after a pause. "She was my wife. She died a few years ago." Lila nodded, solemnly, as if this was something she understood all too well. "My mommy died too," she said simply. Daniel felt his breath catch. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "That must be very hard." She nodded again, but her expression was serene, as though she'd come to terms with it in her own way. "She told me not to be scared," Lila said, "that she'd always be with me, even if I couldn't see her." Daniel's eyes stung unexpectedly, and he had to look away, blinking hard. "She sounds like a very wise woman," he said. "She was," Lila agreed. Then, looking back at him, she asked, "Do you ever talk to your wife?" "All the time," Daniel said with a sad chuckle, "even though I know she can't answer." "Maybe she does," Lila said softly. "You just have to listen differently." There was something in the way she said it, so calm, so certain, that made Daniel's heart twist. He looked back at the headstone, suddenly aware of how different this visit felt from all the others. There was a stillness, yes, but also a strange warmth, as if the air itself were holding him gently. Lila wandered closer and sat beside him on the grass, folding her legs beneath her like a child who had done this many times before. "Sometimes I imagine my mommy is sitting next to me," she said, "and then it feels like she's really there." Daniel nodded slowly. "I think I know what you mean." For a few minutes they sat together in silence, two unlikely companions bound by grief and the inexplicable comfort of shared presence. He glanced at her again and felt that same strange tug in his chest, the sense that she was more than just a lost child. There was something almost otherworldly about her. "Do you come here often?" he asked. "Not really," she said. "Just when I feel like she's calling me." Daniel looked at the headstone again, then back at Lila. "What was your mother's name?" he asked. "Anna," she said quietly. Daniel froze. His blood turned to ice. That was his wife's name. He turned toward her fully now, searching her face, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. "Lila," he said slowly. "What was your last name?" She looked at him with those big, clear eyes and said, "Thorn, like yours." The world seemed to tilt beneath him. "Lila," he whispered, barely able to breathe. "My wife. We never had children." "Yes," she said softly. "You did." And then, just like that, she stood up and smiled gently. "She wanted you to know she's okay," she said, "and that she's proud of you. She never stopped loving you." Daniel couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he stared at the girl, unable to understand, unwilling to believe. But deep down, part of him did. Part of him always had. Lila turned and began to walk away, her small form moving gracefully through the cemetery, her hair catching the light like strands of gold. He didn't try to stop her. Somehow he knew he wouldn't be able to. She walked without looking back, and as she rounded a bend in the path, she vanished, as if she had never been there. Daniel sat frozen, staring after her, heart pounding, in his chest. He looked back at the headstone and whispered, "Anna, was she really?" The wind stirred gently through the trees, rustling the leaves, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt something lift, an invisible weight, a pain he had carried so long it had become a part of him. He stood slowly, placed a trembling hand on the top of the stone, and closed his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. As he walked away, the cemetery didn't feel quite so quiet anymore. The shadows seemed softer, the sky a little brighter, and in the center of his chest, where the ache used to be, there was now a flicker of warmth, a memory, a hope, a miracle he could never explain. But he didn't need to. He just believed.